My task today is to talk about the everlasting quest. We are citizens of a new millennium. We haven't started out from scratch. We've inherited values, challenges, problems, probably even guilty feelings. So our contemporary horizon that you and I look at, regardless of our age, presents to us an endless variety of spiritual and religious patterns, programs, enterprises, which beckon us all. On the one hand, we have ancient and pre-Reformational traditions, New Age religions, secret schools of Gnosticism, Buddhist, Shinto, Confucian sects, various psycho-spiritual and occult movements, all of which beckon to women and men's search for the ultimate meaning and destiny of life. Here we are, amidst the proliferation of the latest brotherhood, spiritual institution, denominational offshoot, or transcendental drug experience, competing vigorously with all the traditional mainline churches and synagogues. What more could we ask for? We've reached a point in our history, too, where we're becoming more critical. This is a sign of courage, I think. More critical of the formerly sacrosanct regions of our institutional religions. We're not afraid to challenge. And so the rulers of these organizations, from rabbi to lama, from bishop to pundit, no longer bear the unquestioned authority in life that was formerly attributed to their office and rank. Now, this doubting of inherited orthodoxy is really a healthy symptom of a climate whose inhabitants resent putting their full trust in any official authority. It's disturbing and sometimes even lonely to recognize this in yourself. And so we may have a tendency to suppress it or avoid it. And this climate received its inspiration not so much from the official encouragement of religious authorities, but from names that shaped the last century, like Darwin, Freud, Einstein, even Karl Marx. Along with a host of historical events, which we're not always so proud of, the wars and the tragedies, as well as the marvels of our technology, we have just walked away from the bloodiest century in Western history. Now, these currents that we're inheriting and we bring into this new millennium can be unsettling in our consciousness. So much so that people might feel that human destiny has more meaning without the belief in God or religious values. But the construction of any spirituality presupposes a fundamental basis in humankind, namely the dynamic presence within of a consciousness that feels a personal quest for the ultimate meaning of life. And the quest of spiritual consciousness ought to clarify the meaning of life in its final perspective, not just contemporary. And this clarification necessitates contact with life and personal renewal undertaken individually or collectively, or both. It's a search through the finite, the everyday, the routine, the contemporary experiences for signs of more possibility. And thus this quest must be more than a purely mind trip, a bunch of ideas or concepts, more than a series of beliefs or pious ideas or even allegations about God. See, the revered ideas that we've inherited are being challenged today because we're starting to see they're insufficient for the resolution of our personal quest. We want more. So what is required today is less a religious revival of beliefs or a version of one credentials exchanged for another. We want to be able to measure the successive experiences which legitimate the thriving towards the goal of ultimacy. So the paradox and drama today, amidst the superabundance that we do live in this modern culture, provided by our technocratic contributions, is that we have to face a certain profound skepticism because we don't feel we might be able to overcome the forces of skepticism. And so, at times we feel bereft of any confidence that there is an ultimate coherence to life or an eternal order behind the passing of time. If our spirituality is to take a positive role, then, in forming the next millennium, we must encourage dialogue among all religions and with the leading fields of knowledge that shape the mentality of the modern world. In order to prepare ourselves adequately for this dialogue, we must carefully examine all the versions of consciousness that prevail: scientific, religious, artistic, political, and so on. This examination is not for the sake of a new opportunity to expound and collect converts. No. It's rather an opportunity to see that if we're still hanging on to old structures that have exhausted their juice, if we're still repeating the same old cliches for fear of not having something that can supplant them that gives us vitality. The problem of translating spiritual meaning in a world that is not obviously concerned about it, and the problem of competition between religious and spiritual appraisals is something we have to deal with. Spiritual and religious consciousness cannot afford to neglect listening seriously to what the arts, the sciences, the philosophies declare about the human condition. For these fields of endeavor disclose the complexities, the mistakes, the aspirations, and the potentials of the present status of the human quest for survival and ultimate meaning. No religion can hope to survive, let alone influence the trends of the world, by distancing itself as an exclusivity in terms of other worlds. You can't join the hermits. But to enter into a day-by-day confrontation with global existence, we need to carry on in a very positive criticism so that we don't succumb to the skepticism of our often failures. We have to recognize at times that we're on the verge of broadening our comprehension of the cosmic laws that affect the molecular structures of the universe. These will enlist human consciousness not as a spectator anymore, as much as a primary and participating architect. We are on the brink of another Copernican revolution. We're moving away from simply being the passive spectator now to the active participant in shaping the energies of the future. We're designing time. We're designing the future. The kinds of discoveries that made the age of enlightenment so vast simply serve to be a special case, in much the same way that Newtonian physics was a special case of Einsteinian relativity, which in turn now is a special case of the quantum and scalar world. Advances such as these have a direct bearing on your concept of the possibilities and the limits of human nature. We're about to embark on a new anthropology, the meaning of human existence, and a new cosmology. What is this world all about? But why stop there? Would not these kinds of research also have a great deal to say about what human religion, for that matter, ought to be about? Our concepts of divinity, our concepts of death and beyond. Because at the heart of our spiritual consciousness is the unrestricted desire to be in tune and in touch with the fundamental meaning of life. And oftentimes the most difficult decision we have to make at some special moments is the decision to acknowledge the obvious. The fundamental desire that has taken up the various periods of cultural history and consolidated into traditions, some of which still survive today, are meant to be grafted on to where we're going in the future. Compromises are often unavoidable. People plateau. Spiritual ambition even dwindles. Yet some, under the most trying conditions, stay fired with that unquenchable thirst that's innate to every one of us. So amidst the tragedies and the setbacks of history, the continual pursuit of human consciousness for the truths of reality will illuminate more and more the ultimate quest that's within our spirit. It should not be surprising then that scientific research is not an enemy, but will disclose evidence that is intimately associated with the kind of knowledge claimed by religions. The unifying principle involved in both enterprises is the obvious developing awareness of human consciousness. The investigation of nature, the probing into the realms of the mind, the composition of belief systems, all intersect in human beings whose spirit is pure consciousness. The ultimate needs, then, for society in its estranged conditions are to recover a sense of transcendence and to revive the practical import of humane values for shaping society based upon their self-understanding. No one is going to give it to you. There are no angels with manifestos about to appear. We have to work it out, and that's not easy. To this end, may I offer the following points. First, a spiritual quest needs to continuously engage the phenomena of postmodernity in its ideas, images, languages, art, literature, economics, and political trends. The whole catastrophe. How can a religion or a spirituality maintain its credibility for inspiring people if it stays aloof from the real problems of the world? So it must search out and plumb the hidden values embedded in today's fashionable ways of living. Alfred North Whitehead once remarked that spirituality will not regain its old power until it can face change in the same spirit as does science. Its principles may be eternal, but the expression of those principles requires continual development. I hardly agree. 2, if religion speaks only in the language of the past, then it has effectively retired divinity to its heavenly rest home. 3, in religious consciousness, there must exist a criteria of rationality, don't put the mind down, that respects spiritual diversity and at the same time exposes the shallowness of any scriptural fundamentalism, which should be unmasked as breeding mindless fear in a people shaken by global anxiety. 4, the uncertainty that people feel today in the texture of life is not an adolescent insecurity requiring only a few more years of Prozac. On the contrary, panic is a quite understandable adult response to the fissures of human destiny. But in this matrix of anxiety, people do not lack. More than anything else, people seem to want and to need the recognition of a center in themselves, an abiding, inextinguishable awareness that is unthreatened by the flux of life. Again, borrowing from Whitehead, one can describe spiritual consciousness as a dawning vision of something which stands beyond, behind, and within the passing flux of immediate things, something which is real and yet wanting to be realized, something which is a remote possibility and yet the greatest of present facts, something that gives meaning to all that passes and yet eludes apprehension, something whose possession is the final good and yet is beyond all reach, something which is the ultimate ideal and the hopeless quest. Thank you, Mr. Whitehead. So the primal responsibility of spirituality is to bring about the kinds of evidence that awaken the spirit to its innate humane wisdom. Five, in explicating its program for liberation, spirituality must engage the vital core of other spiritual traditions. No radical pursuit of essential questions can be intelligently conducted without acknowledging the necessary coexistence of other traditions. This is not a surrender to theological relativism, but the honest admission that absolutes are clothed in finite garb for human communication. Theological language, no matter how scrupulously devised, is a finite enterprise and thus cannot exhaust the intelligible meanings available for investigation. No religion corners the market. 7 or 6. The temptation to imperialism always lies in wait. The more authoritarian and doctrinaire a spirituality or religion becomes, the more its zeal distorts spiritual growth. People whose spirit is underdeveloped, as it were, find in these ideals of an authoritarian religion a collective strength which they themselves as individuals have failed to achieve. And in this respect, its submission to this external system of beliefs either satisfies their dimly understood need for power and significance or for shedding self-responsibility. So in conclusion, we may note that the spiritual impulse to grasp the totality of life, whether it conforms to a formal religion or not, impels humankind today to relieve its defective condition by seeking sounder health, better shelter, the elimination of social privations and disparities, the unfoldment of self in art and literature, the unlocking of nature's secrets, the ultimate answer to the question of existence. And this unending vision of an increasing humane culture recognizes the sacredness of all life. However vaguely, it's an expression of humankind's inherent spiritual consciousness and concretizes its optimism for transcendence. It's my hope that one day the separations will dissolve between the empirical and the transcendental, the secular and the sacred, so that a harmony of all life will then prevail, and peace within and without will begin to reign. Now, I'd like to conclude by putting all that in a different way. Oh no, he's going to do it again. And I would like to say it this way, gang. You entered a planet Earth, with a body. You may like it or not, but it is renewable for the entire period. You are enrolled in a full-time informal school called life. And each day in this school, you will have the opportunity to learn lessons. You may like those lessons or think them irrelevant and kind of stupid. Now, growth in these lessons is a process of trial and error, experimentation. And the failed experiments are as valuable a part of the process as the experiment that eventually works. A lesson is presented to you in various forms until you've mastered it. Then you go to the next lesson. Now, no part of life is without its lessons. If you're alive, there are lessons to be learned. And mastering life's lessons increases your freedom. In life, you may think that over there is better than right here. But if your there becomes a here, then you will simply see another there which will seem again better than here. Other people are like mirrors. You can't love or hate something about another person unless it registers. It reflects to you something that you love or hate about yourself. Eventually, the truth dawns that the answers to life's questions reside within yourself. So you have to look and listen, and then trust and act. Now, what you make of your life is pretty much up to you. You are complete but unfinished, with all the resources you require. What you do with them is your choice. And that's what the quest is all about. So, people are unreasonable, illogical, and self-centered. Love them anyway. If you do good, people will accuse you of selfish and ulterior motives. Do good anyway. If you're successful, you will make false friends and true enemies. Succeed anyway. The good you do today will be forgotten tomorrow. Do good anyway. Honesty and frankness make you vulnerable, so be honest and frank anyway. People favor underdogs, but follow only the top dogs. Fight for some underdogs anyway. What you spend years building may be destroyed shortly thereafter. Help people anyway. Give the world the best you have and you'll get kicked in the teeth. Give the world the best you've got. For you're becoming someone the world has never known. And be that person anyway. You are more than you pretend to be. You are more than what most eyes can see. You are more than all your history. So look inside and you will find there's glory in your mind. Come be the kind of people you can be. You're more than what your leaders say. You are more than how you earn your pay. You are more than what you seem today. So drop the loser's mask. You're equal to the task. The question you should ask, who are you? You're more than some statistical chart. You're more than the sum of all your parts. You are more inside your heart of hearts. You know that's true. This body that is you has miracles to do. Why not? You are more than what a preacher shouts. You're more. Come, let your spirit out. You're more. Your soul, have no doubt. Arise, become awake. With every breath you take, the good inside will ache to be. You're more than cell and blood and bone. You're more than just your name alone. You're more than all you may own. So look around you everywhere. There's something in that we all share. The magic in the air is you. You're more than what your parents bred. You're more than what your teacher said. You're more than what's inside your head. So let your vision expand. And everybody can stand. So that in your quest, you'll soon find out. There's a reason for the sun-shining sky. And there's a reason why you can be so high. It must be the season when that love light shines all around us. So just let your love flow like the mountain stream, and let your love grow with the smallest of dreams. And let your love show, and you'll know what I mean. It's the season. So let your knowledge fly like a bird on the wing, and let your love bind you to all living things. And let your heart shine, and you'll know what I mean. And that's the reason for your quest.